It's so much better than trying to sync the Audacity. Go ahead and introduce yourself. This is gonna be a really confusing episode for quite a lot of people.
Yeah, so I'm actually in the Hacks Discord, and they have
Excellent.
titled me the other Eric Martin.
Which is
So
funny as fuck
you're
because I'm
Eric
not in that
Martin.
Discord.
Yeah, you're Eric Martin, and I'm apparently the other Eric Martin, which
Excellent.
it makes sense because you were in the community before I was. So
I
I
don't know if that's true, but sure. Um, so that's really we'll talk about that later, but that's really funny because I don't think I'm in the Hacks Discord. Are they pretty active on it?
no, not very active at
Okay, that's
all.
fine. That's fine. I don't need it.
Yeah,
I'm like in 13 fucking Discords. I have them all on mute.
yeah, I have the same thing because like otherwise
Okay.
my phone's just blowing up constantly from something, and it's just I already have like a million text messages and emails that pop through, and I can't.
Yes.
I'm like one of those. I get really like obsessive compulsive about like having my emails cleaned out, so I only have like the four things I'm actively doing, or like my text messages. I hate leaving people on read. Like if someone texts me, I always respond back. I'm
Do
really
you
really
you
weird about
haven't
that.
turned that off yet? Like you can just turn off the read function so that people can't see if you read their message or not.
Oh,
I'm just letting you know
even
you
if
can do.
yeah, so I even if that's the case, it's not in me. I have to always be like, yeah, okay, like acknowledge that I got the message from them.
Mhm.
So I have to turn off notifications all the time. Otherwise, I'm just like constantly checking my phone.
That's
So
fair. We should mention that what you do for a living that might actually like there's a reason, right?
yeah, yeah. So I oversee three pizzerias in the Charlotte area,
There it
and
is.
so I'm constantly interacting with different managers about a variety of stuff that goes on, and they are corporate locations that I am like part owner of these locations. And so I'm also in communication with corporate office quite a bit through emails about accounting or marketing or whatever. Like currently, we're actually in the middle of doing some 10-year renewals on two of the stores. And
Okay.
so some of that's been going on. Um, Trying to finalize one store and get the second store started on that. There was COVID threw a wrench in it. They were actually supposed to start like 2 years ago, and
Uh-huh.
construction materials and getting stuff scheduled is just a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm sure the costs are insane. Like we did some home improvement this year and the cost on stuff was not great, Bob.
Yeah, it's like all like 2 and 3 times more expensive than it was even just like a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yep.
And then trying to get the material, like we started this first store's remodel in January, and we had
Mhm.
to close for 3 days to get new countertops installed. And then we were not able to start our floor tile for like another month and a half. And even then we had to like change the color we were going to go with and transition through like some other it was one material, and then I got switched to a different material, and then I got switched from that material to a different color in the same material. And then even that was technically we had to go to another color that was like one shade lighter or darker, whatever it was. It was really weird. Like they couldn't get the color we wanted, but they were like one shade lighter. It was fine. So we
Yeah.
ended up just you at some point you have to do something. You can't just sit there forever.
No, you definitely can't sit closed for like that. Like it's just yeah, it's not making money. Like
Yeah. So we just at some point you gotta do something. So that's what we're doing right now. We're trying to finish it up. We got some wall vinyl graphics up
uh-huh.
today, and then we got we had an exterior neon sign at the one location that like jumps off the building like sideways, like old timey, like
Yes.
kind of Vegas neon. It looks really nice, and we got it installed like 3 months after we first opened it. But they neglected to put the registration mark next to the name, and
Uh,
so we had to have someone come out and like install a little R next to it. But and then the cost add up. But it is what it is. So
that's a live and learn situation. I would not have thought about that either. I'm like,
yeah, I
yes,
know.
this is good. Like
And it got approved by the first time. Like the first time that went through our marketing department, they were like, sure, no problem. Now 10 years later, they're like, hey, we need this thing.
hey,
Like,
hey about that. Awesome.
gotta happen.
Well,
I'm
let's talk
sure it's
about
to
more
cover
fun
some
stuff then.
bases.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure. That's like it's just lawyers. This is lawyers doing lawyer things.
Yeah. That's what they get paid for.
Yeah. They've like we can talk about lawyers. We can talk about lawyers offline. But let's talk about more fun stuff. Let's talk about probably the hottest weekend event, SummerSlam.
Yeah. So this is my second SummerSlam that I managed to go to. My
Okay.
last year was the first Hex event I went to, and I had a blast. It helped that I finished in third place.
Right. Right.
And then along the way, I managed to beat a bunch of people, but I got to play against Jamie, who organized it in the second to last round, and he is a prolific shit talker.
Yes.
And
Correct.
he does it before the match, he does it in the match, and then the beating him was very nice. He's also a very nice guy, and honestly like a big sweetheart if you like.
Also correct.
Yeah, if you just get to know him a little bit, but he loves to talk the talk as he's going on.
Well, hold on,
And
let's set the stage here. SummerSlam, 2-day event or 3-day event? I'm pretty sure it's 2.
it's so technically they do
2.5.
stuff for all 3 days. They do it on Friday. They meet up at the gathering place, and
Mhm.
they usually cube. A little spoiler alert: this year, Jamie and I were playing a little bit of a grudge match, which we were able to start, but not able to finish out through all the matches. Um, and then the actual event is on Saturday, and it starts at about 10 or 11 o'clock in the
Sure.
morning. Goes on for 6 rounds. It's a split format event. Last year and this year were 3 rounds of vintage, followed by 3 rounds of old school Eternal Central rules.
Mm-hmm.
So not Atlantic or Swedish.
Four strips, most importantly.
Yep, 4 strips, 4 strips. Both events I have not played 4 strip mines though.
Well, that's sacrilege, but we can. I mean, I understand why you didn't based on your deck, but
Yeah.
yes, and that's all
And
in
then
Charlotte, right?
yeah, all
Okay.
happens in Charlotte. And then on Sunday they meet up and they do more like just general stuff. I think it's more cubing is predominantly what it is, but um, there's some pre-modern that happens. Like Gabe Farkas is huge in the pre-modern community,
Mm-hmm.
and he is a local to the Raleigh area, and he has a large presence that he is trying to push forward in pre-modern to get more people to be active in it. Um, and he is also a generically great guy that I got to meet the very first time. When I went there, I actually didn't know anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I drove up by myself. I had gotten invited from George, Round Corners 40,
Yep.
because of interacting with him and some of the other guys on Twitter without actually knowing who they were or like where they were at
That's
really.
that's the best part.
Yeah, Mark Brothers was one of the first people to interact with me in the old school community, like kind of routinely. And he's obviously well connected with lots of people through the variety of communities. And he knew where I was, and I think he tried tagging me and stuff for people that were kind of in the area. Raleigh is like a 2.5 hour drive, but
Okay.
better than like a drive to Boston or, Texas or, some of the other places that are have big communities of old school. And so they had invited me out. Sorry about that.
All good.
And I showed up and said hi to some of the people that I had met a little bit online. And I just sat down and was trying to like look over my list and everything to make sure that I was comfortable because I brought some extra cards to side in, side out, whatever. And I just started randomly having people come up and engage with me. A guy named Ben, who now we talk on Discord about stuff. Like we're actually kind of going back and forth on maybe a list for their winter event, which is Hacksmiths that they do,
Okay.
um, which I also went to last year. And Gabe heard me talking about pre-modern when I was talking with Ben, and he came up, and they're just very nice, happy people who are looking to just enjoy talking about or playing Magic and hanging out with people. Like they're just a bunch of really good dudes, and I'm very happy that I've gotten to meet as many of them as I have.
Did you guys play any Hextended?
So I did not play it at SummerSlam because it wasn't one of the events, but we
Okay.
did play it at Hacksmith's.
Okay.
It was getting told it was a format for the event was the first time I'd ever heard of it.
Good. Good.
Uh, I'm in pre-modern and I have a couple of decks for that. But it was actually a very interesting deck building exercise for me because the pool is very similar to pre-modern, but eliminating all the white border cards um, is a big deal. It's a huge deal.
Yes.
It's and then on top of it, their banned list, I believe, is just like the anti cards for the
There's some
format.
other stuff. There's some like specific cards that are like super broke. We'll have to pull that list up later because I don't. I'll have
Yeah,
to
they
look
do
at it.
have a restricted list for most of it, which is really
That's right.
interesting. But I was trying to look through. I
You're
played a
right.
lot
Yeah.
of extended back in the day, which is why I like pre-modern a lot, and that's why I believe most people who like pre-modern were probably heavily into like playing extended in the late 90s, early 2000s during that time era when you had like the duels and everything else. And so I started looking through the cards that are banned in pre-modern, but legal as four ofs in hyper extended.
Hmm.
And it's a format that allows force of will, which probably means that the best deck is going to have force of will in it. Like it because it's going to want to either push through its combo or have the ability to fight off against the degenerate combos. Which then led me to think that if force of will is very good, then hand disruption is going to be very good between duress, cabal therapy. And so where I started at was the best deck in the format in theory is probably going to play either duress or forcible in some format on it. Now,
Maybe both. Who knows?
maybe both. And so I started off with deciding rather than trying to figure out what I think would be the best force of will deck, I was going to try and find what I thought would be the best duress deck. And they also allow four of Entomb, which is completely banned in pre-modern.
Hmm.
And so I built a mono black reanimator deck that leaned on duress, cabal therapy, unmask. And then because you have Entomb, you can actually cut down the amount of creatures that you're running because you don't have to actually like physically find them. It's effectively four tutors to get what you need in there. And then I just kind of built up the deck and from there. And I was really happy with it for the most part. I ended up losing my second to last round because of two cards that I had put in, which were more hedges. I'd actually done a lot of work talking about the deck list with my buddy that I used to PTQ with. His name's Mike.
Hmm.
And he suggested trying to make it as linear and fast as you can possibly make it. Because the old decks that used to be in extended, which were at the time called Benzo, Your Move Games at the time, had done all the work in them. And they would have some stuff in the deck like two main deck Faceless Butchers and Petrodon and a Wood Ripper would maybe be in the sideboard. And his point that he and I ended up coming on board with it is if I get out, say, a Wood Ripper to kill your three artifacts,
Okay.
I'm gonna have to reanimate something else and actually kill you eventually the other way. I'm gonna have to, and so if what I should try and do is like try and first turn my big monster with some form of discard as often and as fast as I can, rather than trying to mess around with, oh, here's a Wood Ripper, I can eat through your three artifacts. Well, if I just kill you on turn 4, it doesn't
Doesn't
matter.
matter.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, I actually, because Tormod's Crypt is not legal in the format, the best it's only white border in the format. So because it's not legal, your best way of actually interacting with the graveyard is Phyrexian Furnace, which costs some mana to cast, which means that if they're doing that on turn 1, they used up their turn to get this down. And then it only taps to exile like the bottom card or the top card or whatever it happens to be.
Right. It's
I
like
think it's the
something
bottom.
weird.
And so if I go like first turn land, Lotus Petal, sacrifice the Lotus Petal to Entomb to reanimate,
Hmm.
it doesn't even work. They physically cannot actually eliminate my threat from that point. And cremate means that if they wanted to run cremate, for example, which is another good way to interact with the graveyard, they would actually have to leave the mana open and wait for me to actually do something. And if they want to do that, then I can go through and duress them and Cabal Therapy or Unmask or any number of things. Now, I ended up losing my round 5 match to a guy playing Groatog with
Okay.
game 1 I won, and game 2 I got Petrodon. And Petrodon unfortunately only has 5 power, and if it had 7 power I would have won the game, but it only had 5 power. And so Petrodon is no longer in the deck. Petrodon was removed to add in another, either a Chroma or a Symbiotic Worm. And then I pulled the Wood Ripper out of the main to put in the other one. So I cut 2 cards that don't kill you in 3 turns from the time it comes into play to add in cards that actually do that. And so I ended up losing there, but in round 6, I played Jamie, and he plays a blue-black Storm deck,
Yes.
which is really good. Like, it's a very good and fast deck. I'm a little watching it in play. It looks like its consistency is not quite to where you would want it to be. Like, it feels like it's missing something to help it be just a little more consistent.
I think it's because his favorite card, Brainstorm, is restricted.
Yeah.
All the good storm spells are like you're right, the banned list is just the anti cards, and then they have like all the good shit's restricted. So like Brainstorm, Burning Wish, Demonic Consultation, Frantic Search,
Necro,
Necro, Mystical Tutor, like all like Windfall, Yogg Bargain, and Yogg Will. Like you can play one-offs. So that's why I know that he's put a lot of time and effort into his deck, but I see where you're coming from. It's all the good stuff's just restricted.
It looks extremely powerful, and on average, it probably has the highest overall ceiling in the format because it, like, every card is just like they've been banned in multiple formats. Like Yogg Bargain has been banned and stuff. Like all these cards, like half of his deck is not legal in pre-modern. Like, it's really good. Unfortunately for him, on game 2, because I had won game 1, and he just kind of like fumbled through some of the stuff. And on game 2, I had a Putrid Imp out. I had a 7 power thing in play, and he ended up like mystical tutoring for Vampiric Tutor to get like Necro, to put Necro into play. And then he Necros from from 17, and he Necros down to 10.
As you do.
And then he's like, and then he goes, you know what, I'm going to do one more. And he goes to 9. Because he looks at my board, and my board has 8 power on it. So I untap and I draw, and I discard my 2 cards to Putrid Imp and attack him for exactly 9. And he just didn't know that Putrid Imp got a +1/+1 when Threshold happens. My Putrid Imp went from 8 power on the board to 9, which was exactly lethal. And at that point, he had already, most of the people at the event had been drinking throughout the day. So I'm like, you get a little loosey-goosey near the end of the rounds. And I think if I had played him earlier in the day, I don't think he makes that mistake on that round. But he did, and I finished in 3rd and for the Christmas event also. I have, however, brewed up what I think is actually a much better deck.
Okay.
And I did play Jamie on it during our grudge match. So I've beaten him twice.
This is grudge match Friday night, correct?
This was a Friday night. So I've actually played him in both events that I had played prior to this one, but like the one that happened last weekend.
And some epic shit talking on Twitter.
Yep. I decided that I would try and play into the SummerSlam wrestling hype machine feel. Yes. And Jamie is a very good sport about it. And so I decided to lay my 2-0 record down there on Twitter and just really hype it up that I was doing that. And eventually he got annoyed with it after about a week. And he challenged me to a 5 format grudge match, 1v1 with Vintage, old school, hyperextended, Canadian Highlander, and Aussie Highlander, or 7-point Highlander, I guess. And I have never played Canadian Highlander or Aussie Highlander. And
Good.
so I accepted the challenge because I'm not going to back down after talking a bunch of shit.
Yes.
And then I realized that I don't know those formats, so I'm going to be at a massive disadvantage for those formats. So I tried to convince him to switch it to double old school, double hyperextended, and he declined that vulgarly.
As you do. So
As you
like
do.
I want to explain for like 3 people listening. SummerSlam, it has a wrestling theme to it. So I would say I don't know very much about wrestling, but you were trying to play the heel here, and you
Yes.
somehow made the Hack Father himself into I believe they're called baby faces. I could be wrong.
Yeah, he was.
I don't know how you did. I don't know how you made that magical transition because normally he would be the heel, but you somehow switched it up on him.
I did. I went out there and I felt like since I was 2-0, I had the record to back it up. You know, I'm throwing out Mr. Perfect gifts at him. I'm throwing out the rocks, just rock bottoming people, and I just every couple of days I felt the need to throw out like 3 or 4 tweets, just kind of antagonizing him a little bit, not too much, but just enough to like keep the hype train going. And it's really encouraging when other people who are part of the group like or retweet or comments, and it just kind of like makes you feel good as you're doing it, like you're getting that feedback.
I was into it. I wanted to see. That's what that's the whole reason we're doing this podcast. I don't know who won yet. So
we were able to play 2 of our rounds.
Okay.
So I drove out there and I ended up getting to the game store at around 7:00. And he was in the middle of a cube draft, and he literally stone cold quit, got up, and walked over. So we started off by we played Vintage and we played Hyperextended. And
what was he playing in Vintage? I think I know what he was playing. Was he playing Bizarre?
He plays Bizarre in Vintage.
Tough matchup for you.
It normally is because I've been on White Weenie like Luris. Yep. And I actually stone cold changed the entire deck I was playing. I know like Initiative is kind of better for the white creatures right now.
Yes.
I didn't really understand how much better, but I ended up going online and finding a list on MTG Goldfish because I'm a filthy net decker and I don't want to put in the effort to learn.
Just a format. Dirty GBT.
I know, right? And I found a blue-white Tinker Initiative list, and I was like, well, that looks cool. And so I got some proxies made up, and I played that, and we had a very close 3-game match with him on the play game. No, me on the play game 3. And I ended up getting out the 4-drop Initiative creature and the 3-drop Initiative creature. Mm-hmm. And on the like last turn, because he's about to kill me on his next turn, I got a Manifold key to make one of them unblockable, and then the other one got protection from creatures, and it was their combined power, and then the drain for 5 was enough to like kill him for like -2 or Xaxes or whatever it happened to be. But I managed to pull that one out. It was close. And then in Hyperextended, I actually brewed up a High Tide list. And I had a friend back in Extended who used to play High Tide, and I've listened to some All Things Considered where they did the King interview. They've done other interviews where they've talked about like PT Rome, where High Tide was really big. And one thing that I know about High Tide is that it's super consistent, and it's very difficult to actually interact with it because it doesn't have artifacts, so you can't cut it off of artifacts. It doesn't really care too much about its graveyard because like you can't just pull out one single card and really end the game for the most part. Like if it started to go, it's already generating multiple mana, and it only runs basics, so it's completely avoids wastelanding, stuff like that. And it's a very consistent like turn 3/turn 4 deck. So like 3.5, like if it gets to turn 4, you almost assuredly either should have mulliganed or you're going to be able to go off. And it gets to do so with a full Force of Will like package in it. And so I ended up playing the deck against him, and both times, basically turn 3, I just started comboing off. In one game, he Burning Wished to go get Haunting Echoes, and on the following turn, he was going to be able to Haunting Echoes away like a massive graveyard for me. And I was like, oh, well, High Tide, Time Spiral, let's just go through this. And then in game 2, I Time Spiraled like 3 times, and he kept getting Cunning Wish. Like, not Cunning Wish, sorry. He kept getting a Brain Freeze in his hand. But I'm like doing stuff, and then I'm gonna Time Spiral, and it's gonna undo the Brain Freeze that he's going for.
Right.
And so on the last Time Spiral, he did not get a Brain Freeze, and I just Cunning Wished for my Brain Freeze on my sideboard and just emptied his entire library in. And his deck is definitely faster in the aggregate, but mine is like just very consistent that it's like turn 3.5, I just do my thing. He duressed me multiple times one game and pulled High Tides, and it just didn't matter. Now I might be drawing well too. Like, that's very possible. I do feel like I get extra lucky against him. I'm assuming it's, justified. Fair.
I'm gonna have him on for a separate episode later. He's got too much work going on right now, so I'm gonna have him on for a counterpoint episode. Because I don't want to go through like I think one of my favorite things about Hextended in general is the lack of information available, right? So like there's the rule set, and then like if you know where to look, you can find decks from like when Extended was a format. But honestly, like nobody's putting their deck lists out. Like, you know what I mean? It's like kind of like a protect your tech stuff. You know what I mean? So that's where I like it the most.
Yeah, I think that Survival of the Fittest is a very good deck in pre-modern, and I think it's borderline unplayable in Hyperextended. And this is like, maybe I'm being a little short-sighted on it, but in my opinion, the best decks that have Survival in pre-modern and other formats are like, they play like 3 or more colors for the most part, because they're using like the toolboxiness of it, or perhaps it's in like Survival Elves. The problem with Elves is it doesn't have Llanowar Elves in the deck. And if you're cutting off 4 of your like mana accelerants, it's going to be problematic. And then for the same thing for Survival in general, you don't get City of Brass, and you don't get Birds of Paradise. Eliminating Birds of Paradise and not even having Llanowars to like replicate that, for me, makes that deck like just it's a very powerful card that I think is not going to be able to function as well as it can. It becomes a much more fair card when you're not like dipping into like 3 or 4 colors to be able to put together a combo. And then I think red aggro in general, losing Lightning Bolts, Ball Lightning, the best weenie deck is probably the white weenie deck, because you can get out a couple of creatures, and you can just I don't even know if there's Armageddon in the format, is there?
I don't know. That's like half the thing is like it's such a specific set of cards that you like have to actually sit down and think about it. And they have, for everybody, I put it up on the screen, but like they have you can click on the one link off the hacks, and I'll put this on the website, but it links you to all the cards that you can actually play in the format, so you can go through and take a look. But format knowledge is definitely a big plus for this, because there are, let me see real quick, there are 5,322 cards in the format.
Yeah, it's the entirety of pre-modern, but eliminating all core sets and eliminating Chronicles.
And no ban list, it's just restricted.
Yeah. And so like you do get a Vampiric Tutor if you want. So my mono black Reanimator deck did have a Vampiric Tutor in it. It came up almost never, and I don't know if it's good or not, but I also think that there's probably a pretty good like mono blue Dreadnought list. I know someone was on it at the Christmas event.
Mm-hmm.
It probably is also a very good Force of Will deck. You could probably run Force of Will and maybe like a foil or two to really like amp up your free counter spells if you really wanted to. Like mono black doesn't have Hypnotic Spectre, so you can't lead on like the discard, and you don't have Fallen Empires, not that Pre-Modern does, so you can't use like Hymn to Turok to try and clean up some of your mess. So I think mono black might be a difficult one. I think aggro decks in general are like toned down. And if I'm playing against red decks that don't have lightning bolts, or I'm playing against white weenie that doesn't have Armageddon, like if you're playing a combo deck, you're just not afraid of them. That's just fine.
You're just goldfishing.
Yeah, like, oh, you put out Mother of Runes, and then on turn 2 you put out like a 2/1 Shadower. Like, good luck trying to kill me before I can time spiral 3 times and brain freeze you for 1,000,000. Like,
yeah, it just be like that some days.
Yeah, but after we played those 2 rounds, we ended up going and getting hot dogs from a place called Sup Dog.
Okay.
It was actually really good food.
Okay,
it reminded me
of the hot dog in comparison. There's only one comparison. That's the Costco hot dog, because everybody has been to Costco for a hot dog. Yes. Better or worse than the Costco hot dog?
So I would rather have had a Costco hot dog.
There it is. Okay.
Also, I'm originally from Michigan.
Okay.
Metro Detroit area, and the hot dog that I think is the best hot dog is actually a National Coney Island hot dog.
Okay.
Where it's a hot dog with it has meat chili, but it's like no beans. And then they put little finely diced onions and mustard on top of it. I grew up with it, but that is my personal, like, if I could only get one hot dog for the rest of my life, it would be that one. The Costco hot dog, honestly, have you ever had like one of those hot dog vendors outside of a Lowe's too? Like,
yeah, no. I don't think the Costco hot dog is the best hot dog to have existed. Okay. I just think it's an easy standard by which to judge other hot dogs, because a lot of people have had them. I think it's the best hot dog for the money. I don't think you can compete with that. But like, yeah, I realize there are much better there's nobody who's arguing that. It's just an easy standard. Like, was it better or worse than that?
I mean, they all really enjoyed their food. I enjoyed it. It felt like a knockoff Coney Island. Like, the chili wasn't quite right. The one I specifically got
had beans in it.
It might have.
Chili with beans in it, disappointing.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I know. It's the only correct answer.
Right. 2 Eric Martins agree.
Exactly. That's all that's required. What else did you guys like? Did you guys play at the hot dog? I saw the pictures from Twitter at the hot dog place. It did look decent. Did you guys like keep fucking around?
No. We just mostly ate, and then afterwards, Jamie's been like really, really busy with stuff, like you said.
Yeah.
Work and just some other stuff. And so after eating, I think he had been there a significant time longer than me, and so he just kind of like, hey, I need to just go home and like chill out, because I think putting on the events, I've never put one on, but it seems stressful trying to have like 30 people and like keep them organized and doing what you need to do. And on top of it, there's a lot of theatrics that happen at SummerSlam.
Also true.
The people dress up. I got to play against Macho Man Randy Savage wearing the actual like leather pants, leather jacket, and a cowboy hat round one, like the fringe down the arm. Like,
I'll add the pictures on Twitter to the episode link. But yes, like for everybody listening, people like there's another section of this event where people dress up like their favorite wrestlers, and there is I believe a competition to see who did the best cosplay, if you will.
Yep.
So it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Macho Man took it home this year, and he got a mini, like a small championship belt for it.
That's right.
Last year it was Gabe Farkas, and he dressed up as the Russian guy. I'm blanking on his name right now. It's like Vladimir.
I don't know. I don't know anything. I really don't know anything about wrestling.
Yeah, but he wore like a red spandex bodysuit and like one of the fur hats, and he talked in Russian. And he actually wore it out apparently later that day when they went out for food after the event. He's just walking around like he's coming from like an amateur wrestling show.
That's what's up.
We had two IRSs, Erwin R. Scheisters. We had $1 million man this year.
Nice.
We had 2 luchadors. Someone dressed up with the Steiner like chainmail headpiece, and he went shirtless.
Yes.
Yeah, and then Jamie and Eric dressed up as the Bushwhackers, and they actually tag teamed the event. I guess so. They kind of like put on everything together. They collaborate and like collect the money, make sure they get the food, the venue, and everything.
Yes.
And while that's going on, it's tough to play and also do it. So Jamie handled their vintage rounds, and then they tagged, and Eric played the old school rounds while Jamie like just went through making sure that everything was on pace, so that you had someone basically functioning as an adult for all the kids.
Yes, and again, for the other people listening, the other Eric is actually the best Magic playing Eric. Yeah, he does better than both of us together.
Yeah,
he like actually knows how to play.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say this year, for this SummerSlam, I ended up going 3-3, but I had a lot of fun doing it, mostly from the old school deck, which I had gotten feedback from you on. I did look.
How did it go on the old school? Did you win all 3 of your old school rounds? Is that what you're telling me?
I did.
Fuck yes.
Yeah, I went 0-3. So round 1 I played against Macho Man, and I was playing the initiative deck, and he was on Oath of Druids, and they were not particularly close games. He beat me pretty soundly in both of them. In round 2, I got paired against a gentleman named Andy, who was on a Grixis Tinker Storm list, and we're kind of talking about, just beforehand, just trying to be friendly. And I'm like, "Oh, are you from around here?" He goes, "Oh, I'm from Charlotte." I said, "No, I'm from Charlotte." I said, "Where in Charlotte?" He goes, "I'm in Matthews." I'm like, "Oh, I'm in Matthews." And I go, "Where?" Like, he goes, "Oh, you're in Matthews." I go, "Well, technically it's Stallings." And he goes, "I'm in Stallings." and he goes, like, "Where at in Stallings?" I go, "Oh, I live in blah, blah, blah neighborhood." And he goes, "I live in that neighborhood." And so I said my street name, and he literally lives like a street behind me. You
guys could have carpooled.
I could have walked to his house and played Magic there instead of driving 2.5 hours. So it really felt like an old like Pro Tour qualifier, because like we would drive from like Michigan to Columbus, then get paired against your friend in the first round, like all the time. And so he ended up beating me in 3. I felt like I maybe wasn't playing particularly well. I sequenced kind of badly, and then he was playing well, and so he rightly punished me for every missequence I did.
Right. Okay.
And then in round 3, I played against Matt Turnenberg.
Yes.
I think it's Matt. Yeah. And he was on a blue Mishra's Workshop deck. So he was playing like Workshop, but he had the like Thoughtcast and the Thought Monitor, the artifact creature that draws 2 when it enters the play.
I don't know anything about Vintage. Yeah.
We went to 3. We went to game 3, and I mulliganed my 7-card hand, my 6-card hand, and my 5-card hand. I kept a Zero-lander, and he cast a 4-mana 5/3 that makes all non-artifacts cost 1 more. Whenever you play a spell, and that was a very fast clock. Yeah, it was a very fast clock for me. So I started off 0-3, which meant the pressure was off.
Yeah.
And then we switched over to old school, where I was running dorky 1/1s and fireballs galore.
Yes.
And basically every round kind of went according to plan. I did find out that I did not know the rules text or the card text for City in the Bottle, because the Silex you have to sacrifice, I believe.
Silex you have to sacrifice. City in a Bottle stays in play.
I thought City in a Bottle was a sacrifice also. So round 4 I played against Gabe, and he was on whites, red, like Vice Winter Orb lock.
Yep.
And he just kind of drew a lot of lands, and I drew a bunch of 1/1s and eventually fireballed him out.
Nice.
In round 2, I played against a gentleman that I had met named Micah. We actually, for the Christmas event, had kind of brainstormed back and forth on decks for hyperextended. I find that I'm not a very good deck builder in general, but what I am good at doing is like bouncing ideas off up back and forth off of each other, and
Yeah,
like
ideas, man.
kind of fine tuning some of like the edges, like cut a card here or there. When it comes to like a big picture of a deck, I'm usually kind of lost. I used to just get handed decks and everything. That's usually like I would show up and they'd be like, "Here's your deck you're playing today," and that's kind of what I would do.
Oh yeah.
But so I need collaboration like when I'm actually deck building, which is why I had reached out to you and Mark about this one.
Mark was probably a better choice, but yeah, continue.
I ended up not actually like getting to go back and forth with feedback on him about it, but honestly, like the feedback you gave was like super helpful.
He's also like super busy. I've been trying to get him to come out here for the event in June, and like I think he registered, but he's like 75% to come. Like it's just everybody's busy. It's just tough shit.
Yeah, but Micah was on like Arabian aggro. He was actually on like four color aggro, and we split 2 games, but in the second game, which I won, he had like 3 Arabian cards out. I did City in a Bottle, and then I sacrificed it because I'm playing a GeoCities of Brass proxy, which is just full art.
Yes.
And so I sacrificed it, and then I like regrowth my own City of Brass, cast my own City of Brass, and like went through and did some stuff. And I won the game pretty easily, but like who knows what would have happened if I hadn't like cheated. And then in the next game, I play it and I go to sacrifice it, and Jamie happens to be walking by and he goes, that's permanent, right? I'm like, well, yeah, then you got to sacrifice it. He goes, no. It just comes into play, it destroys everything, and then it stops them from coming into play. And I'm like, oh, man.
Yes.
And here's what I should have done. I've thought about this. I should have just conceded the match is what I should have done, because he already had won a game and I had made a mistake. And I apologized profusely. And at the time, I didn't concede. He told me it was fine. And I thought about it. And if I could go back, I would have probably just been like, you get the win, man. Like, there's no pride. There's nothing on the line. Like,
right.
It just, looking back on it, I feel like I even when we're playing these friendly matches, like even if I'm just playing for fun, I like to hold myself accountable for my mistakes. So like if I miss a trigger, I don't ask to have it back.
Same. I'm the same way, dude.
I almost always let other people go back. I ended up playing Gabe like 40 games of pre-modern on Friday night after Jamie had left.
Oh Jesus.
And
yeah.
I missed something. I missed like returning a squeeze from my graveyard to my hand, and he's like, you can do it. I'm like, if I do it, I'm not going to learn. Like I have to punish myself for this, otherwise I'm not going to ever like, I'm not going to forget that again tonight. I can assure you that. Like it punished me. There's no, but I should have taken the step and actually just conceded to him. And I didn't, and I feel bad about it. And I've apologized to him repeatedly, both in person and now, like in Discord and stuff like that. But he is a really nice dude, and I really it was been nice getting to know him some too. And then in the last round, I played against Ben Lee, who was playing a like mono blue stasis deck. And when he wants to win by casting Howling Mine and like black vicing me, my deck full of land and 1-drops is not the ideal matchup, especially when I have Thallid, and Thallid like makes its own army every so often. And so I can keep under the 4 cards by like land 1-drop, whatever it happens to be. But on top of it, his stasis isn't actually stopping me from being able to attack him every so often for like chip damage.
Right.
And then eventually I can just fireball him out, which is what ended up happening. And then Blue doesn't have a ton of sideboard cards to bring in against me. Like, what are you going to bring in against Scrib Sprites and Llanowar Elves and Thallids? Like, nothing.
No, you need red for like fucking Earthquake and shit.
Yeah, Falling Star, whatever the case may be. And then like I got to bring in 4 red elemental blasts. So it's like it just gets better for me. I could bring in Tranquility, I could bring in Shatterstorm if I needed to. Like it's just I had access to everything that I needed to be able to fight against him. Could have been worse. I could have had Tsunami, I guess.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't bring Tsunami to a Hacks event. I would bring it to others. Yeah.
And then, but I'm already, unfortunately, some filthy Atlanta Tusks managed to finish at least 1 and 2.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And so my new trash talking campaign is no Tusk wins Hacksmiths.
Explain who the Tusks, like some of the guys who've been around for a while know who Team Tusk is, but could you explain who and what is Team Tusk? To your best of your abilities.
So my understanding is it is the old school community of players in the Atlanta or possibly Georgia area, which is adjacent to North Carolina, which is where we are from, and a bunch of really nice dudes that I interact with on Twitter. But they came to our states and they took home like at least first and second. And while they were standing there collecting prizes, they're throwing up the 4 horsemen, 4 symbols, and taking pictures. And in wrestling, that just does not get to fly. I'm sorry. You know, there have to be repercussions for that. And so I have very loudly declared that no Tusk will win Hacksmiths as long as I have anything to do about it. And I don't know what the formats are going to be, but I will be prepared to not play any of them and not be able to do anything about it. But I'm going to try.
Excellent. So they used to have a podcast. I'm gonna reach out and see if I can get their response for Hacksmiths to see if what their thoughts are on this. I have a feeling you might be up against some stiff competition, especially if they're going to play vintage.
Yeah, so last year for Hacksmiths it was half vintage, half hyperextended, and I have already declared it on Twitter, and so I've gotten Brendan and Pernicious Z have both posted tweet responses. Pernicious Z actually said that if my game plan is to try and beat them, that declaring that they will not win is probably not the way to do it. I should challenge them to like see who gets last place, because then they'll get competitive and want to get last place instead.
Okay.
So I've almost like poked the bear to make sure that they show up prepared. But that's just the way it's got to be. That's just how it is.
All right.
Sometimes you talk your shit, and sometimes you get your shit kicked in, and we'll see what happens.
We'll see. He's Magic Bernie on Twitter, but yeah, I know who you're talking about. All right. I'm looking forward. We can have a follow-up episode. I'll have to maybe help them resurrect a little bit. Come talk some shit.
Yeah, I know. Magic Bernie. I know he dressed up as IRS, so he was wearing a short sleeve, full button, white collar shirt with a red tie, red suspenders, and like black pants.
Nice.
Which is like an old school wrestler. He used to team up with the $1 Million Man, and there was in fact the $1 Million Man there handing out fake hundreds, trying to buy people off for wins.
That's what's up.
It's pretty awesome.
Staying in character.
Yeah.
So what did you guys do Saturday night?
I actually ended up leaving. I stayed around for about an hour after the event ended, and then I got home because I have 2 small kids, and
as you do, yep.
Leaving the wife alone with them for a day and a half, because I did go out there Friday night. I spent the night there. They had a really nice hotel room, like booked, available, and I was able to get home in time to help put the kids to bed. So
you burned up all your credit, your wife credit, if you will. It had been expired.
Yeah. There is next month, I know Gabe Farkas is putting on a pre-modern event. I know that that's not like it's a huge thing. I know that there's some crossover between old school and pre-modern, but I know on it's a Sunday. I want to make sure I get the correct date because I put it in the calendar and I don't want to say the wrong date, and just in case. But on July 16th, he is planning on having a pre-modern. he's hoping it'll be enough people to run like a small Swiss event. And so if anyone happens to be in the greater Raleigh area on July 16th, I believe at 1 o'clock at the Gathering Place is where he's planning on it. So
I'll send him a note and reach out. I normally wouldn't promote such a format on this podcast, but I'll make an exception.
If you want to, you can edit it out. That's not a problem. But
no, we'll leave. Well, I don't want to cut anything. We're just gonna leave it in. I'm not want to cut shit.
Yeah, I mean, editing takes a lot of extra work, right?
Yeah, no, it does. It takes me about 10 minutes to make an episode once we're done recording. Okay, so overall, great event. So I got to make it out one of these years. It's just hard being on the East Coast. The Hacksmith is the next big Hacks event. You're already signed. You're already signed in for that one. What you got? You gonna do anything else in between, or is like you have zero wife credit between now and Christmas, which I understand.
Mostly that. We're actually planning on between running the 3 stores and then the kids. My weekends usually end up being kind of like tight on stuff.
That's done. Yeah.
Yeah. I was hoping to, or I would have liked to have tried to make LobsterCon this year, but it actually happened to be on the exact same weekend as SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it wasn't, being in the same month would have basically made it like a no. I personally am going to prioritize the Hacks events over other stuff. So like if there was another event that I wanted to go to and it was kind of within the same like 3-week span around it, basically I'm not going to be able to do it. And then there's only so much free time I have in general to be able to go to them, even if it did line up. It's sometimes it's tough to like be able to like pay for a plane ticket when you're like, oh man, this could be like my kids like summer camp this year. You know,
they'll get smart by like they need to rely on you. Need to like be like, look, kid, your college is on you. You know what I mean? And then just spend that money, dude. Just spend it.
Yeah, one nice thing is I've started doing some more like proxies, like the Canadian Highlander and the Aussie Highlander, and it's a lot better to just not buy these cards that I don't want to play anyways. Anything that honestly anything that has now in like the modern frame, I just have zero interest in general beyond
NPC fill, copy print, done.
Yeah, I can't. I just don't want to keep up with it. Like I kind of check out some of the spoilers because I do have friends that play like just normal Commander. I do have a couple normal Commander decks that I play up with them, but I just don't have it in me to keep up with it anymore. And the new cards are all so crazy. Like I know that sounds very boomer or whatever to say, but they were just talking. I was just listening to a podcast where they were talking about how back in the day, Jackal Pup was the best 1-drop you could muster. A 2/1 with downside in red. And now Ragavan is a million lines of text, all of it upside. It's a 2/1 with nothing but upside.
Correct.
And it's just like, we used to stone ring people to oblivion, and that's just not a possibility anymore. And like, I don't know.
You're just reaching the point that everybody reaches, and then you sell off all that shit, and you just have one box, and that's it. And you're like, this is it.
And if there are people that enjoy it, I'm like happy for them, and I want them to enjoy it. I'm glad that it's available to them. I'm just no longer the target market for it. I like looking at very old pieces of cardboard and gameplay that I find more enjoyable than what I've been seeing now. Like I was invested in Modern, and I ended up selling out of that a while ago because
what's the point?
They print a new set in every deck before it has been invalidated by whatever. It's just
especially if your time's tight, right? Like it's not like you can get out every Friday or Saturday for like a PTQ or whatever they're calling PTQs now, right? Like this is like the advantage. I'm telling you, you know what your next evolution is? You're going to start building a cube.
So I wanted to do that at some point.
Then you're dead. That's it. You build it, you're done.
My big problem with that is like I actually built like 4 Pauper decks because I was like, I could show up and I could have my friends play some Pauper with me. And what happens is that they bought cards that they want for like their commander decks. And so rather than want to play this pauper deck that I'm willing to let them just play with, they want to play with the cards that they actually bought. And so even if I built a cube, I feel like I would show up and be like, hey, do you guys want a cube? And they're like, well, I really just got done building this deck and I really would rather just play this deck. And so that's actually what stopped me from doing it originally. Gotcha. I started like collecting some of these cards to build a cube, and then I was like, like I offered a draft and they're like, well, I just got done with this deck. So like, let's just do this instead of going and buying 3 packs and drafting or whatever it happened to be.
Filthy casuals.
Yeah, which like more power to them, and they spent their money. I want them to enjoy spending it, how they spent their money too. So it is what it is. And I did get to cube for a round at SummerSlam, so that was nice. Like it's a really nice cube that they have. They have like a bunch of the.
Do you remember who's you were playing?
I think it was Dr. Bill's.
Okay.
Some really nice cards in there. So I drafted a pretty good deck, and then I horribly just punted away game 3 of the one round that we got to play with it, where I had Lethal on board and just didn't see it for some reason. Like he's just dead. There's just no way around it, and I'm just like, and it's your turn. Go ahead.
And
then he mounted a comeback. Yeah, all you have to do is attack, and you're gonna win. Your go.
Your go.
And then he ended up getting me. I ran him out of threats except for like the 2 that he had on the board. He literally had no threats left in his deck. He had like Llanowar Elves or something, like just nothing that could win except for what he had in play. And I just couldn't get to like a Wrath of God effect to end the game. But them's the break sometimes, you know?
It'd be like that.
Yeah, for sure. But I the last 2 events for them, last year's, the 2022 summer and winter event, I finished in 3rd place. So I started calling myself the self-declared intercontinental champion. I actually bought myself an intercontinental championship like replica belt.
Excellent.
Which I was gonna wear, and then I decided I did not want to have that around me for 6 rounds of 50 minutes a round. That didn't sound very fun. But I think I'm actually gonna cosplay for next time because I've been trying to look up wrestlers that people haven't done. There's a gentleman that wears a red kilt named Roddy Piper. I think I'm going to go for that because that seems like it'd be easy breezy.
Yes, I'm familiar with the name, and like the thing is, you could wear that out because if you wear that out, you're just another dude in a kilt, which like
right,
which happens. Like people do that shit, right? So like you could get away with it.
Yeah, and it's just like a plain white shirt, little kilt with a belt. So I think I might do that next year. We'll see. Okay. We'll see if I'm brave enough to actually muster up and do it. So.
All right. Well, I got to get going here soon because my wife is staring at me from this direction that you can't see.
No problem. I appreciate your time, and it was really nice to finally get to actually engage with you like face to face.
I know. Not just on Twitter.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'll have to have you back on around Christmas time. We'll talk Christmas stuff.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
All right, man. I'll see you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Boop.